of darn drinking, being a real alcoholic. But somebody 12-stepped me through this program finally and simply solved my problem. So today, Brother Dan, we're going to talk about an interesting topic. In the big book, it talks about being doomed to an alcoholic death or to live on a spiritual basis. You know, we only have two alternatives. That's either death or life. A real alcoholic can choose to keep on drinking even after we are doomed. I know I had that experience, right? I knew something was wrong with me about 40 years ago, 2 years after I started drinking. Well, shoot, I just kept on and on. And this stuff is progressive because it got worse. Each day it got worse. The consumption grew up higher. I didn't know I was suffering from a darn allergy that was causing me to continue to drink because I got thirstier each time I took a drink. My body was demanding some more. I got so thirsty. And at the end of my drinking career, I was consuming incredible amounts. I'm talking for the last 30 years of drinking. I was consuming incredible amounts. In and out the rooms of AA, no solution. I kept on drinking. People used to say, meeting makers make it and just don't pick it up. You can't get drunk. Now, what kind of advice is that to give somebody like me? I'm the real alcoholic, as they describe in this big book. I suffer from this allergy. My mind is twisted. I had that mental twist, that insane idea that taking a drink would be okay. But it never was, and it brought a whole lot of consequences, right? But the consequences didn't make me alcoholic. The fact was I couldn't control my use of alcohol. I was totally out of control. So the big book makes several important facts. The word doom is where I like to start off at. And we first see this here on page XXX in the big book. So Brother Dan, on page XXX, the last paragraph at the bottom where it says this immediately. Short paragraph.
It would help if I'd muted, wouldn't it, really?
Okay.
Sorry, what paragraph are we looking for? Sorry, this immediately. Yeah, it's the very last paragraph. Yeah, on page XXX. This immediately precipitates us into a seething cauldron of debate. Much has been written pro and con, but among physicians, the general opinion seems to be that most chronic alcoholics are doomed. What is their solution?
Okay. You good right now. I want to talk about the word doom for a minute. There it is. So, the general opinion among physicians is that most chronic alcoholics are doomed. Yes, we are very doomed. We don't have a way out. Once we reach that certain point in our drinking career, where we cross over from being a regular drinker to a moderate drinker to a real alcoholic, we're doomed. See, them regular drinkers, they can take it and leave it alone, or they can even stop if circumstances permit. You know, they might find a new wife, get in a relationship, a new husband, get in a relationship. They may have health problems. The doctor tell them you need to stop drinking. They can probably stop, but a real alcoholic like me couldn't stop. I suffered a lot of things. I was doomed to an alcoholic death because I simply could not stop drinking no matter how hard I tried. I didn't have the solution. So the big book tells us we have two alternatives. One is to live on a spiritual basis or face an alcoholic death. I was a dead walking zombie, no spiritual life, no nothing but a chronic alcoholic mind. So I was very doomed. But thank God, the Keystone Group enlightened me to what the problem was. Therefore, I could find a solution. And then they gave me the course of action and it commenced to solve my alcoholic problem. So at the top page, XXXI, it asks a question, right? What is the solution? Perhaps I can best answer this by relating one of my experiences. We're talking about the man, Hank Parkhurst, right here. He was New York's #2 alcoholic. So Bill met him at Towns Hospital. He was a salesman. He lost his job because of drinking. So the doctor goes on to relate, about 1 year prior to his experience, the man was brought to be treated for chronic alcoholism. Remember, us chronic alcoholics are doomed. You know, so he had recovered from a gastric hemorrhage, right? And seemed to be a case of mental and pathological deterioration. This gastric hemorrhage is bleeding from the inside, and it's an abnormal condition, and it's caused by a disease, right? A lot of cases, it can be the drink, you know, alcohol affects every organ in our bodies, and it breaks us down, whether we even realize it or not. But anyway, it goes on to say, he was only living, one might say, to drink. I can remember that. I only live myself. I only live to take a drink and another drink and another drink. But then it goes on to relate, following the elimination of alcohol, there was found to be no permanent brain injury. In other words, he accepted the plan outlined in this book. The solution for us chronic alcoholics is simply the 12-step program, as it's outlined in the first portion of this big book. But then, Hank, he stayed sober for 4 years, right? Approximately 4 years. Then he drank again. So he didn't stick with the course of action. Eventually, he led up on a spiritual program of action, and he rested on his laurels. And that's normally why we go back to drinking. A lot of people say, not doing a complete step one, we'll drink again, right? But that's the step one promise. If we don't have a solution, we are sure to drink again. But the spiritual program of action is vital for us chronic alcoholics. Then again, another spot in the big book I'd like to bring up is on page 44 of our big book, in We Agnostics. And it says to the one, Brother Dan, where it says to the one who feels he is an atheist or an agnostic, just that little short paragraph. We'll touch on that.
Sweet. Middle page, We Agnostics, page 44. To one who feels he is an atheist or agnostic, such an experience seems impossible, but to continue as he is means disaster, especially if he is an alcoholic of the hopeless variety. To be doomed to an alcoholic death or live on spiritual basis are not always easy alternatives to face.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Brother Dan. To be doomed to an alcoholic death to live on a spiritual basis are not always easy alternatives to face. So we have but two alternatives. You pretty, baby. You look good. Alcoholic death to live on a spiritual basis. We're going to talk about some spiritual principles once we get through with this dooming part. So here, I know in my drinking career, you know, when I was preaching and stuff, right, I thought I could solve my own alcoholism. I thought being in a religious organization at the time would solve my alcohol problem. But the problem was I didn't have a relationship. So that's what it's all about. We have to gain a relationship simply with a power greater than ourselves. So then at the bottom of the same page, it said, if a mere code of morals or better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism, we would have recovered long ago. But we found that such codes and philosophies did not save us, no matter how much we tried. We could wish to be moral. We could wish to be philosophically comforted. In fact, we could will these things with all our might, but the needed power wasn't there. Our human resources, as marshaled by the will, were not sufficient. They failed utterly. Yes. Now he talks about our human resources. I thought human beings could solve my alcohol problem, but that wasn't so. It talks about power. The doctor talks about this in the doctor's opinion as well, that it says, back to page XXIX, it says, as far as our drinking career, it's the first paragraph here on XXIX. It said, now this is repeated over and over, talking about our drinking. It's repeated over and over. And unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there's very little hope of his recovery. Yes. On the other hand, as strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, there's that word again, the very same person who seemed doomed, he who had so many problems he ever despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol, the only effort necessary being that required follow a few simple rules. Actually, the course of action, the 12 steps, as laid out in our big book. It solved my alcohol problem after the 40-something years. So I thought I was going to die an alcoholic death, because that's the way I was headed. So another thing I like to bring out on page 101, in the chapter with working with others. I scroll on over there right now. Okay, page 101. And it's going to be in the middle, the second full paragraph, and I'll get this one, Brother Dan.
Yeah, in our belief, yeah. Sorry.
Where it says, it says in our belief. That's where we start right there. It says in our belief, any scheme of combating alcoholism, which proposes to shield a sick man from temptation, is doomed to failure. Yeah, a real like us, you can't stop us from drinking. You can't hide it from us. You can't shield it from us. You can't tell us we can't go this place or that place, because it only makes matters worse, because we're going to get it anyway. So any family members, anybody try to stop, shield us from like I used to hear in meetings a long time ago in the treatment center. Well, when you drive down the road, try not to go past the old liquor store you used to go to and all of this. Okay, there's liquor stores everywhere. So how is that going to stop me from drinking if I'm going out of my way to avoid these places? But talking about the sick man, see, we alcoholics, we some sick people, right? So I'm grateful my wife never tried to shield this stuff from me, because she knew I was going to get it anyway. I bust out and start arguing and leave home just to go get drunk. If she even thought about hiding my liquor, I didn't have that problem. But I've had some in the past. They would try to break my liquor and hide it from me, and been a fight always would ensure. So, and then it makes a very important point in the very same paragraph, because it reads, if the alcoholic tries to shield himself, he may succeed for a time, but he usually winds up with a bigger explosion than ever. Yes, indeed. Well, you talking about some blow-ups and puff-ups. I've been through plenty of them. I'm sure we all done had these episodes. And first 100 men and women said, we have tried these methods. These attempts to do the impossible have always failed. No doubt. Doom. You can't stop an alcoholic from drinking. But most people don't understand alcoholism, no. And that's a bad point. They cannot understand. And back on page 92, I'd like to share this little short paragraph. No doubt about it. So, on page 92, talking about doomed again. We alcoholics are doomed. We never realize their predicament, and explains that many are doomed who never realize their predicament. No doubt about it. We doomed because we can't realize, like when we working with others, right? I go to the top of page 92. It says, when we helping others, right? If he is an alcoholic, he will understand you at once. He will match your mental inconsistencies with some of his own. But you know, we done already lost the power of choice and drink, so we doomed anyway. So then if we are satisfied, you know, that this person is a real alcoholic, we begin to dwell on the hopeless feature of the malady. Yes, we are doomed because we're hopeless. We don't have a solution. And then we got this queer mental twist surrounding this first drink. I'm sure y'all can relate with that. Yeah, I'll be like, shoot, I'm gonna get me a drink. I can stop at 2, I can stop at 3. No, next thing you know, I'm somewhere in a darn blackout, or I'm somewhere getting in trouble, and I'm somewhere drinking up all my liquor and everybody else's liquor that I might have, anywhere I might have went around. So it says, continue to speak of alcoholism as an illness, a fatal malady. We got this fatal malady. It'll doom us to death because we think these crazy things. Now, the malady sometimes it creeps up on us suddenly, like my man Fred with the milk situation. Suddenly, the thought crossed his mind, it'd be okay to put a little whiskey in his milk, provided he eat a couple of sandwiches, right? So that matter to tell us, oh, it's okay to drink. You don't eat your 2 sandwiches now. You can put some milk in your whiskey and you'll be just fine. You won't even feel the effects. But the lie detector determines is you're going to feel the effects because we alcoholics, we simply love the effect that alcohol gives us. So, but then explain to them that we are doomed who never realize their predicaments. So, but we can talk to them about the hopelessness of alcoholism, the hopelessness of alcoholism, because we offer a solution. I'm grateful for the solution that was offered to me because I was doomed. Some of y'all heard some of my story, but I was entirely doomed to alcoholic death. I was a dead walking man, and I didn't even know it. But you know, my own conceptions, my own beliefs, they didn't work. You know, that's why we talk about if it's a mere code of morals or some form of philosophy will stop us from drinking, we'd have recovered a long time ago. So now to the 12 steps, it talks about, 12 steps is a program of recovery, right? That's our solution for alcoholism. Well, we'll eventually get to a power greater than ourselves, you know. And the program that's outlined by the first 100 men and women in this book, they simply describe what the founding members did to, to get sober and to stay sober. So this book contains no new ideas. It talks about surrender and self-inventory, confession to someone outside of ourselves, and some form of prayer and meditation are concepts found in spiritual movements throughout the world for thousands of years. What the steps do is frame the principles for the suffering alcoholic, sick, frightened, defiant, and grimly determined not to be told what to think or what to believe. We can be what you call it, anti-Semitic or something. We don't want to hear something because we so stuck on our own. See, it's my own beliefs that had me doomed. So, man, no doubt. But then, the steps offer us a detailed plan of action. First thing we got to do, we got to admit powerless over this thing. Well, we are being beaten by alcoholism. We can't stop our own selves from drinking. I couldn't stop myself. It didn't matter how hard I tried. I tried everything in the world, man, trying to stop myself. See, I was doomed. Every day I tell myself I'm going to take a drink. Shoot, that matter to creep in, I take that drink and I'm drunk. Because I can't stop. I couldn't stop. So we talked to another person when we go through this thing. When I was being 12-step through this thing, we all had to take that moral inventory, and then we do our step 5. So we talk to our sponsor or whoever we choose to hear our step 5. And that relieved me from a whole lot of bondage, stuff that I had clogged up inside. So we're going to get on some spiritual principles in just a moment. 12 steps. Now, there's a great big topic in the rooms of AA, and it's called God as We Understood Him. This is all throughout our big book. Whether you be atheist or agnostic, we all come to believe in something greater than ourselves. The agnostic can believe the sun shines. It comes up every morning in the east and sets in the west. They can believe in that because they don't have a belief in God. They don't believe God exists. However, the agnostic, right? We know God exists. But we just didn't think we needed him, especially to stop us from drinking. So that's agnostic. I was very agnostic. I knew God existed. I believed in him. I just didn't want nothing to do with him for a lot of years. I really did. But then I'm a true believer today, right? So today I can depend on God for everything that goes on in my life. So coming to the basic principles of AA, starting in the early 30s, 1935, when Bill Wilson met Dr. Bob and formed the first meeting between Alcoholics Anonymous. It was created then. The book didn't get completed to 1939. It was published, and the Alcoholics Anonymous book has been deemed one of the most influential books in the history of mankind. All because of what Bill and Bob did to get this book done. So Bill W. talked about the trial and error period of Alcoholics Anonymous in the early beginning. In the beginning, they was using 6 steps borrowed from the Oxford groups, right? We all a little familiar with the Oxford groups. That's where many of us AA started out at. So Bill felt that more specific instructions would be better. And in the course of writing the AA's basic text, Alcoholics Anonymous, he expanded them to 12. See, today we operate on 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and they are all based on spiritual principles. You know, like we said, the topic today is to be doomed to an alcoholic death or to live on a spiritual basis. And that's what the big book Bill Wilson laid out and the authors laid out. We had to build a spiritual structure throughout, and Bill builds this structure throughout the book. So he's seen that this was needed. And he's a saint. He had to be divinely inspired to get this book wrote. Bill Wilson wasn't the first alcoholic though in the world, but he happened to be the first one that we know of that actually sat down and wrote about his life, what happened, what we were like, and what we was like now, what we were like afterwards. So it's a beautiful thing. But then Bill, he was dealing with a bunch of sober new drunks. And not surprisingly, his new version, when he expanded the steps, you know, they met with a lot of opposition. But he was, even though the founder members were in many a homogeneous bunch, you know, it had all forms. You know, we had all different forms of people. We had all different races of people. It didn't matter, male and female. We had Christian, non-Christians, everybody from in the world representing Alcoholics Anonymous, because we come from all forms and shapes of life. So Bill tells us in Alcoholics Anonymous, the Comes of Age book, you know, it's a history of the fellowship's early years, that the hot debate about the 12 steps in the book's context was doubled and it was redoubled. They were conservative, liberal, and radical viewpoints. Some thought the book ought to be Christian, right? There's plenty of them in the first 100. Others accept the word God, but they were opposed to any other theological proposition. And the atheists and agnostics, they wanted to delete all reference to God and take a psychological approach. Well, you know, us chronic alcoholics that are doomed, psychological measures didn't work for us. It didn't work for me. I better shoot, no. I leave out this psychiatrist's office. He's trying to tell me what I can do to get sober. I leave out that. That approach didn't work for me. I'm a real alcoholic. That stuff did not work for me. So, you know, we hear this talk about this God in step 2, right? Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Came to believe. Ebby told Bill Wilson, why don't you choose your own conception of God? You know, God as you understand him. As long as this God can get you sober, we have no monopoly on whatever somebody believes. It's simply their own conception. See, we alcoholics on page 45, it talks about lack of power. That was our dilemma. So we had to find a power by which we could live. And this power is based on spirituality, not religion. Because some people, they try to tell us, well, y'all getting too religious in these groups of Alcoholics Anonymous. No, when we talk about a relationship with God, it is our relationship. You don't have to choose whatever I believe in. I don't have to choose whatever you believe in, and I would not knock you for whatever you believe in. If it works for you in this program, God bless and keep you. Until then, no doubt, keeps you sober. So here's Bill W. When it talks about the 12 steps, he considered each step to be a spiritual principle in and of itself. So that's where we come from being doomed. We take the steps, we can now live life on a spiritual basis of life. That's a solution for an alcoholic, spiritual basis. Now, before I go any further, you know how we build an arch, right? So step 1 will be the foundation. We got to have a foundation before we can move any further. We got to have a spiritual foundation. So step 2, we have a cornerstone. We got the foundation, and we got to have a stone on the corner to hold the structure up. And then step 3 will be the keystone. We got the keystone at the top, and it forms a whole arc. Spiritual build is building a spiritual structure, and it's got to be solid. Each point got to be very solid. So he did mention something in the 12 and 12. I don't really reference to the 12 and 12 that much, especially in the workshop, because the big book is our basic text. It's everything in the big book we need to get sober and to stay sober. So you won't hear me talking about the 12 and 12 much, but Bill in the 12 and 12, Bill outlined the spiritual principles behind each step, though. Some of them seem like common sense, but understand going into the exercise that reading these principles and actually practicing them in their day-to-day lives are two very entirely different things. And that the latter part, it requires diligence and willingness. Remember, three things that are important: willingness, open-mindedness, and honesty. We got to be always willing to do whatever it takes to keep us sober, to get us sober and to keep us sober. What is it, page 58 and how it works? It says, our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. But in the very first paragraph, the very first principle in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is honesty, fairness, and straightforwardness of conduct, adherence to the facts. We have to get honest with ourselves. We got to be honest and accept the fact that we are real alcoholics. We can't do this alone. We got to have help. We got to have a power greater than ourselves if we are convinced to solve our drinking problem. So the first paragraph on page 58 and how it works talks about honesty 3 times in the very first paragraph. It says, usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There's the honest word. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they had a capacity to be honest. Step 1, principle is honesty. Once again, step 2, the spiritual principle for step 2 will be hope. Remember, step 2 came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. There is hope right there. If we can believe in something greater that's outside of ourselves, we can have hope. And this hope starts back on the title page of this volume that we have right here. Because the title page, it says Alcoholics Anonymous, the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. The hope starts right there on this very title page. And that gave me a lot of hope when somebody would 12-step me through this process. I didn't have no hope. I was a doomed and hopeless alcoholic. To be doomed to an alcoholic death, that's where my butt was headed. If I'd have kept drinking, I'd probably be dead today because I'd end up killing myself in some way, form, or fashion. I was doomed. So I had to, alcoholism beat me into a state of reasonableness. The big book talks about it. Beat us down to a state of mind. I can't live like this no more. I can't stop myself from drinking. I got to have help. See, I'm the kind of fool, I tried to 12-step myself for years. Over 3 decades in and out the rooms without a darn solution. And nobody ever 12-stepped me till I found this Keystone Group the very first part of 2020, and I commenced to recover from alcoholism. And had a great sponsor 12-stepped me through it. Tony R had a big role. Joe C had a gigantic role in my process. These guys, they stuck with me. And matter of fact, this meeting was Joe C's meeting until he called me up last year or sometime, and he said, I'm gonna leave AA for a while. I gotta do my Christian walk. So he called me first, and that's what I take the meeting for. And we've been going ever since, me and Brother Dan. And it's a blessing, right? Because I was a doomed alcoholic, man. I was just doomed. That step 2 came to believe. Then the promise of step 2 is step 12, and that's the point we want to get. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. spiritual awakening. There are people that is a solution for alcoholics and alcoholism. And it's rooted here on page 5, 6, or 7 in the big book. I have this experience, people, because on page 5, 6, or 7, the very first paragraph, the spiritual appendix, the spiritual experience, in appendix 2, it says the term spiritual experience and spiritual awakening are used many times in this book, which upon careful reading shows that the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism has manifested itself in many different forms. See, here's that personality change. Remember again, Dr. Silkworth talked about this in his opinion. He mentioned unless a person can experience an entire psychic change, there's very little hope of his recovery. To be doomed to an alcoholic death, they're not easy to face. We ain't got but two alternatives at this point. But then, step 3, the spiritual principle for step 3 would be faith, complete confidence in a power that's greater than ourselves. We came to believe in step 3. So the basis of step 3 is belief and trust. We come to trust that this power greater than ourselves could get me out of this doomed and hopeless state of mind that alcohol like me was in for 42 years of my life. Thank God for this AA group program of recovery. Man, I heard so much crap in these rooms over the years. All it did was make me drink every day, but it was the malady that was making me drink. But I wasn't getting a message from this book. The meetings I was going to, they were telling me everything that ain't in the book. So, So then we go on to step 4. The spiritual principle for step 4 is courage. Yes, firmness of mind and will in the face of extreme difficulty, mental or moral strength to withstand fears. Step 4 talks about we made a fearless and searching moral inventory of ourselves. Well, as alcoholics, we didn't think self was the problem. But the big book shows us you are the problem. I was the problem. Not everybody else. So we got to muster up courage to be able to write these things down on paper. Take a look at ourselves. Well, I looked at my inventory, man. Everything on there was checked off. Self, I was the cause of this. I was the cause of that. I was the condition that this happened. I was the condition on top of a condition and another condition. But I had to pray about it first so I can write all this stuff down. It had to be thorough and honest as possible. So, no doubt, courage. Some people take a long time. They want to do this step 4, right? And step 5. But my suggestion is do it immediately. That's how I was 12 step. And I was so motivated. I could not wait to write this thing down. Fill out these workshop sheets, my step 4 inventory sheets. And then I was so eager to share them with another person and God, man. Felt like a great big weight had been lifted off my chest. But it takes courage. We got to be willing, first of all, right? Then we got to be honest, first of all. No doubt. Okay. Step 5. The spiritual principles of step 5 would be integrity. It's the quality or state of being complete or undivided. In other words, soundness. Yes, step 5, no doubt. I can't help but talk about step 5 because it changed a whole lot of things in my life. See, all this stuff that I've been hiding and wouldn't tell nobody about it. I know y'all hear this familiar saying, your secrets, what is number? Secrets will get you drunk or whatever. I had a whole lot of stuff I was holding in, stuff I never talked to another person about until I could muster up courage and be honest with myself. God already know what I did, right? He already know the people that I was wrong, that I wronged, because I wronged everybody that came across my path. I was a tornado rolling through the lives of other people, right? Just tearing them down. I was a category 10, not a category 5. That's the extreme, very extreme to the fullest. in, write things down. I took it in. But the key part, when it comes to step 6 of spiritual principle, is willingness. This we be prompt to act or respond. We accept, and we did a choice, or without reluctance. That's the definition of willingness according to spiritual principle 6. I read it again. Prompt to act or respond, accepted and done of choice or without reluctance. Now we're able to be willing. If we got some character defects we want to hold on to, we can be doomed to an alcoholic death. We can revert. We can stop the process and go back if we are not willing to let these things go. But then if we are not willing, we simply pray about it. And when the chance comes, we become willing. But we don't want to linger along too long. You know, page 76, it covers step 6 and step 7, actually. It's a short reading, and actually there's more to it than just this little short paragraph. Sometimes I go into great detail on these 2 steps. But then on top of page 76, I like to share this with the group. It says that we can answer to our satisfaction. It says, we then look at step 6. Notice the word. We look at step 6. It didn't say work step 6 months. It says take a look at it, right? So, but the key point is we have emphasized willingness. Willingness is the key word in step 6 as being indispensable, just like in the back of the book where it talks about these 3 are indispensable: honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness, no doubt. So, are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things which we have admitted are objectionable? You know, a little bit about these character defects. They come from holding on to fears and resentments or hurt that we have caused others. And these defects are associated with our spiritual condition. Very important point. We all gonna have defects, you know, for the rest of our lives. The important thing to know, we ask God to remove these defects which block us from getting a relationship with Him. He'll remove them. He'll replace them with something greater. He took away my worst defects. The main defect I had was self. I was so selfish and self-centered. I didn't think I needed no program. I didn't think I needed no God. I didn't think I needed none of my whiskey bottle. That ain't number self-centered. I put liquor above everything else going on in my life. That's just the way it was with a real alcoholic like me. So now, as we grow, we're going to grow on in spiritual discernment, you know, because this must continue for a lifetime, a spiritual way of living. There's not nothing to do with religion, but it is a spiritual way of living, right? So then we ask the question, can he take them? Can he now take them all? Everyone. But here is where I want to get to. If we still cling to something, we will not let go. Once again, we ask God to help us to be willing. Thank God. Spiritual principle for step 7. Humility. Yes. You know, let me share a little bit about this humility. You know, I was a proud, arrogant, drunk, alcoholic. I was proud, I was arrogant. I didn't need nobody to help me do nothing. I'd be like, no, I can stop my own self when I get ready. Shoot, that was a big old lie. The biggest lie I ever told myself. I didn't know I was suffering from this. I didn't know I was suffering from this disease or this illness, as we call it in the big book. I had no idea on me. But I used to tell myself, shoot, I started this drinking, I can stop it on my own. No, I want to be flat on my back again in another rehab, treatment center, detox center, jail, prison, wherever that stuff landed me. Or fall out in the middle of the street right here, or wherever that stuff put me. But I had to get humble. I had to realize, man, something is seriously wrong with your brain, something wrong with your body. You can't stop yourself. So God had to humble me down, right? I realized the fact, you know, I'm super sick. I can't stop myself. So it took a lot of humility for me to take the first steps. I'm the type of alcoholic. Oh, I ain't gonna take no. I took my own. I try to take my own steps, right? But I fail utterly every time. So when it talks about humility, that's a key point. and it's got a little short prayer here, right? It says, when ready, we say something like this. This page 76, dealing with step 7. My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and to my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. Then it says we have then completed step 7. Now, step 3, we begin. Check this out. Step 3 and step 11 is to improve our conscious contact with God. See, we already talking to him here on a great basis here in step 7, because we asked him to go out here to do our bidding, to do his bidding, not our bidding. See, our bidding is keep us drunk and toe up. So, but then the big book says every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all our activities. Humble, humility. Now on to the spiritual principle of step 8. Love is unselfish concern that freely accepts another in loyalty and seeks his good to hold dear. Yes, love. Hey, in our drinking career, we could tell people we loved them, but we really didn't. We always had a motive. We wanted what we wanted, and we was dealing with you to get what we wanted from you. You always had to pay a price if I did something for you. Selfishness and self-centeredness, that's where that comes from. Self will kill an alcoholic like me. But self would have me doomed to an alcoholic death. I thank God he relieved me of the abundance of myself early in the program, because shoot, I had to finally listen to somebody. I had to finally go with the course of action, go through the process. Or else I'd probably be they'd probably be visiting my grave today if I'd have kept drinking the amounts I was taking. I'm sure I would have been. That's where I was headed. So step 8, it says, now we need more action, without which we find it talks about that faith without works is dead. Here's another key point. It says, let's look at steps 8 and 9, right? It says, take a look at them. What do we do about it? It don't say sit here and let's work step 8 and 9 now for a year or work it for a month. It says, take a look at it now so we can move on. Yeah. Unselfish concern. We begin to develop a love for people. So we got a list of all persons we had harmed, and we became willing to make amends to the people we hurt, right? We made this when we did our inventory back in step 4. We subjected ourselves to a drastic appraisal. Now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. Step 8 and 9. So a key word in this very paragraph here on page 76 is in italics. It says, remember it was agreed at the beginning we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. So we can reach out to these people in love. Of course, we probably gonna get some doors slammed in our faces, people hanging phones up on us, they don't want to see us. But as long as we are willing to go through whatever it takes. Key word, spiritual principle for step 9 is discipline. You know, Big Book talks about it. We alcoholics, we are some undisciplined people. Yes, buddy. I always thought I could run the whole show, but in fact, the show was running me, doomed to an alcoholic death. So discipline, spiritual principle, training that corrects, molds, or perfects the mental faculties of moral character, to bring under control, to train or develop by instruction. See, the Big Book talks about following a few simple rules, right? This is the directions outlined in the Big Book. The book calls them suggestions, right? But in the first edition, Bill calls them directions. In a manuscript, the original first edition manuscript that I have, Bill calls them simply directions. So, you know, we being undisciplined, we need discipline. Alcoholics need discipline. I know I did. I sure did a lot of damage in my past, and it caused me some discipline I didn't want to take, but I had to go through it. But then, spiritual principle for step 10, called patience and perseverance. I love this one right here. It said, remain steadfast. Remain steadfast despite opposition or adversity, able or willing to bear, to persist in understanding in spite of counter influences. Excuse me, y'all, I got choked on something. So back again, spiritual principles, step 10, patience, perseverance. Now, when we get to step 10, it tells us this thought brings us to step 10. And it says, we suggest we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. I'm going to read the whole little reading because I love it. We vigorously commence this way of living as we clean up the past. We have entered the world of the spirit. Remember, to be doomed to an alcoholic death, to live on a spiritual basis of life. Only two alternatives we have. So we have entered the world of the spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for a lifetime. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. Then we can resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance is our code, right? It talks patience and perseverance. Yes, that's quite a shift there. Key word, spiritual principle, step 11 is awareness, alive and alert, diligence in observing. No doubt, I really love this step 11 when it talks about awareness. We are aware that we need to live this spiritual way of life, or else we doomed. So on awakening, it tells us on page 86, it says, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. No doubt about it. This is a great way to start today, people. Now we can take the thing off ourselves. God is directing our thinking today. But see, my old thinking is what drove me to these rooms. My old way of thinking, my old way of living. Sure enough. Some people say my best thinking sent me to the room. My best thinking kept me drunk, Pete. It sure did. That was my best thing because I was always thinking of planning to get another drink. But thank God, God is the director today. I asked him to direct my thinking. He can direct my motives today instead of me having a selfish motive. Then it goes on to say, in thinking about our day, we may face indecision. We may not be able to determine which course to take. Here, we ask God for inspiration and intuitive thought or a decision. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. We are often surprised how the answers come after we have tried this for a while. What used to be the hunch, page 87, what used to be the hunch or the occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. Thank you, Lord. It gradually becomes a working part of the mind 24 hours a day. And when we retire at night, we simply review our day. How could I be a better person? Did I treat somebody wrong today? What can I do to be better? No doubt about it. Step 12. Wow. Service, unity. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we try to carry this message to other alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. But what do we mean by practicing these principles? Well, the big book is lined with spiritual principles all through it. We simply incorporate them in our lives. We practice them on a daily basis. It works. It really does. That's what the big book tells me on page 88. Matter of fact, let me read that right quick. It says, matter of fact, let me start at the bottom of 87, then we get ready to close up, Brother Dan. Now, as we go through today, the bottom of page 87, But we pause and we can stop and pray right then. We just stop, take a break, meditate, pray right quick, and go through it. When agitated or doubtful, right? We want to pause and ask God for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves we are no longer running the show. Humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. We are then in much less excitement of fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. We become much more efficient. We do not tire so easily, for we are not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. It works. It really does. So thank God. Thank you, Brother Dan, for always being the great co-host that you are. I thank everybody for being here today. And I pray that somebody got something they can use out of this meeting. And we'll close out. We'll open it up after a while for fellowship questions, disputes, or whatever you may want to talk about for a couple of minutes.
I dispute the fact that it's coming to an end. How about that?
Okay. All right.